Hey everyone, it's Bob Crossan. I'm the editorial director for Endeavor Business Media's Water Group and the editor-in-chief of Wastewater Digest. I'm joined today by Maria Serra. She is Public Works Director for the City of Pasco, as well as Craig Anderson. He is Principal Wastewater Technologist for Consor. And we're going to be talking about a WWD top project that is the City of Pasco Wastewater Treatment Plant. So thank you both for being here and for your time, and congratulations on your top project. It's a great honor to be speaking with you today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
So I want to start first with getting an understanding of kind of the city itself. So my first question, I think, is going to be more directed toward you, Maria. Could you describe just kind of how rapidly has this community grown since 2000? That was like a big reason why you guys needed to make these updates. And what were some of the strains that were placed on the wastewater treatment plant prior to those upgrades being put into place?
Well, that is a great question because City of Pasco has experienced incredible amount of growth. And to give you an example, in the year 2000, the city only had about 34,000 people living in it. And we grew 150% in 20 years. So that got us to just over 80,000 people by the year 2024. So that is a huge amount of growth. And the reality for Pasco is that it has been growing consistently. And there were no gaps between periods of growth. So the wastewater treatment plant, typically you are looking at planning prior to reaching that 85% capacity. But for City of Pasco, that happened so fast that we found ourselves planning when we were in need of being in construction. So a lot of the constraints we found were time constraints. We needed to get our planning done. We needed to keep our plant operational. There was not a desire to have any kind of moratorium go into our development practices. And so with the help of Consor, we were able to do some immediate planning to resolve the things that were our needs, more urgent needs, I would say, so that we could keep our plan operating while we were doing a longer term planning and implementing some of those projects in phases. Of course, as we're talking about constraints, there's always a thought about how much can we afford? How big of a project can we afford at once? And what does the permitting look like? And how fast can we get this done? So I think there were a combination of constraints, but we were able to reach our goal with a lot of work and some hurdles along the way. But it was a very successful process. And I'm wondering, Craig, if there is anything I missed in that answer that you would like to provide more insight on?
I just thought maybe I'd provide a little bit of context. I thought it was great that the city was growing fast. Capacity was an issue, and the city was, in my opinion, wise enough to not take kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and was willing to kind of make some quick investments in their facility. These were short-term investments, but they're willing to kind of invest and get some capacity increase. The chemically enhanced primary treatment, add some forced air ventilation to their trickling filters, some bio-augmentation of their aeration basin, recuperative thickening on their digesters, things to just give them some breathing room to plan and design appropriately for the future and their growth versus just a panic. And I think that served them very well. It cost them a little bit of money up front, but I think it served them very well.
Yeah, having some headroom, that's got to be a major stress reliever too, because like, all right, cool, now we can get to the work of getting this like solved on a super permanent basis. Well, one of the things too that I from your nomination form that really shone through was the focus on especially transparency and how you guys talk to your community about this project, but then also on sustainability elements there. They seem to be kind of cornerstones of the project. What challenges did you face in designing this plant, considering those goals were kind of at the forefront of your mind? Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Maria, and then Craig, you could answer that as well from your perspective.
Sure. So I think from the very beginning, when we were in the planning phases, we established some criteria that were going to be our guiding principles throughout our design. And so some of those had to do with having the flexibility to address new parameters that may appear in our permit in the future. There was a desire to have equipment that was as efficient as possible, without losing that operational flexibility and the simplicity that we needed for our plan so that we would effectively run it with our own staff. And of course, there were constraints in cost, but the cost was not our guiding principle. And I think that was identified very early, which allowed us to make better decisions for serving our community. This criteria that was established through workshops was shared both with the staff within Public Works and those making decisions within Public Works, but also with our finance team, with our city manager's office, and therefore our council also got to understand how we were planning for this facility, how we were going to implement that plan, and how the design was going to be delivered. And then, of course, the construction, right? So with that, and along with the funding that we had strategically pursued through Department of Ecology low interest loans, we were able to also reach our community as a whole, right? We used our council meetings, we did some very targeted meetings trying to engage community or portions of our community that are typically not really engaged in project outreach. And, you know, of course, this comes in a way because of the requirements of our loan funding, but also because it's important to have the information available in a format that is accessible to everybody so that any concerns can be addressed and we can adequately inform the public of what's happening. So all those actions were taken and we were able to get our project into design. Again, as we selected equipment in our design process, we kept that criteria as our North Star, so to speak. And I think that covers most of what I had on this topic, but I'm sure Craig has some insights on the more technical answers.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of, you know, Maria, you summed it up really well. Kind of sitting, you know, the challenge was kind of minimized by kind of like setting that, well, once again, stepping back, setting kind of those guiding principles, North Star from the very beginning on sustainability. And the city did a great job with transparency and communication. But, you know, there were still challenges from a design side. One is, I mean, it hit everybody. COVID hit and everybody had to change. We had to shift online meetings, change how we did design work. It affected everybody in the industry. We now work differently because of it, but that was our first time through. Office closures, etc. Agency furloughs with the regulatory, dealing with. We had to change how we did design reviews with the regulatory agencies, etc. How we documented things, how we worked with them. Like Marie said, cost wasn't the number one driver here. But there was a state SRF loan, and that came with a timeline. And we had a certain plan coming out of the facility plan with 2 phases. That SRF loan, essentially, by the time we worked everything out, came out with, we had 10 months to get it designed and approved, a major facility upgrade. So we quickly worked. Once again, city was great to work with. We sat down and kind of reworked what those first 2 phases had in them with kind of a sustainability twist in mind. There were major aeration basin rehabs, and it's really easy and quick to design new greenfield facilities. But brown reusing and rehabbing existing facilities, that takes a little bit more time. That takes a little bit more effort. And that was one of our goals. So we had to kind of rethink our phasing in the first 2 steps to meet one of those goals. And the city was willing to do that. And we found a way to meet their capacity needs. And that was a challenge, but we met it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maria. You had more to add.
If I may add, I think Craig reminded me that one of the things that we did on the transparency side and trying to improve communication with all the challenges we had through COVID was that we made in our plan to deliver this project, we made sure that our oversight agency who had the need to approve our plans was part of our design workshops. And that meant that they knew from the very beginning, as design was advancing and we were making decisions, that they were part of that decision making and they understood how we arrived to the solutions we had chosen. And that was great for the transparency of how the project was advancing. They had, you know, a pulse on how fast the project was going, what hiccups we were finding, but also they were able to review a plan set that was finished that they were fully familiar with before they even opened, you know, the first page of it, because they had seen it being developed. And so that was a major help in, well, first, building that trust in the design that we had provided for approval, also in allowing for the timeline to be met, because it was an incredible feat. Nobody got set to say, hey, we have 10 months, let's do this project and let's get it done and approved. But that's what we were against, and we did it. We made it happen. So it was a great strategy.
And let's have a pandemic in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you added that, because you know, when most people talk about transparency, they're usually talking about like the public outreach and going to the public and stuff. But the transparency with your regulator is also really, really important. And so that's a fascinating way. I had never really considered the importance of that degree of transparency, of keeping them so involved in the loop throughout the process could probably actually help things out in the long run. That's a great point that you made. Yeah. So another thing here was obviously environmental stewardship kind of lies at the center of everything that wastewater plants do. But what measures here were taken to ensure that the health of the Columbia River was not negatively affected or was properly like accounted for, I guess is the way to put it. Particularly as it relates, there were some anti-degradation measures that were put into place here. So Craig, it sounded like you had some good thoughts here to share with that.
Yeah, I'll kind of hit the anti-degradation first, like you pointed out. That was before we even started. That's one of the critical first steps, is to do an anti-degradation analysis, which we did. And not only are we improving the facility, but we're going to expand the facility. So it's paramount to make sure that as we expand the facility, those increased flows and loads do not degrade the water quality of the Columbia River. So we did do a detailed anti-degradation analysis, work that through with the regulatory agency, Washington Department of Ecology. And kind of document whether there would be any degradation or not, and whether the effluent parameters had to be adjusted or not. And we went through that process, and it ended up we did not have to. The water quality parameters did not have to be adjusted very much. We just had to get some very good functioning facilities. Now, we didn't really stop there. That was the first part. Now, part of the facility upgrades included a new diffuser outfall. The existing one was hydraulically limited and did not have very good diffusion. So there was a detailed river and outfall diffusion modeling that was done. So the city could have stopped and just made a bigger outfall, could have met all the needs. However, if they went another 500 some feet into the Columbia River at additional expense, it would have been, they get substantially better improvement, and it would have been better for the long term. So the city decided to go in that direction. Better for them long term, more sustainable, and better for the river. It's kind of a unique stretch of the river. It's in the backwater of a dam. So depth versus river velocity is the more critical parameter for mixing and dispersion. And we were able to get to a deeper portion of the river by that extra expenditure. And then finally, kind of back to those those 5 guiding principles, kind of that Northern Star. Using that when we evaluated the alternatives led us to an aeration basin design that just really basically we're not only just meeting today's regulatory requirements, but the design ends up meeting future nutrient removal requirements, but without compromising today's capacity and with no increased cost. Essentially, we came up with a kind of a seasonally flexible selector that allows cities to meet their existing permit requirements and nitrify and do some biological phosphorus removal seasonally.
Well, like my last question for you guys, obviously you talked about this two-phase approach that you're taking. We're primarily talking about phase one here. So I guess my next question is, how has community responded to phase one as it stands now? And then what are the next steps? Like, where are you in terms of phase two right now, and what can people anticipate moving forward?
So phase one, regarding the general public, I would say has not received a lot of attention, and that in public works is typically good news, right? When you get a lot of attention, it's typically because something is not going so great. Now, we do understand that our council and within city staff, there is a lot of appreciation for the work done, as well as some of our stakeholders and other partners within our community that understand the need for a functioning wastewater treatment plant and a wastewater treatment plant that is up to the task of dealing with our projected growth. So there is recognition. It's just not very vocal. And then, of course, there's been some recognition on the professional side, right? Like, for example, well, this interview and some other awards this project has received. Again, it was a very fast timeline. There were lots of challenges. It's a huge project. It had very low change order percentage. It really was a success story, and we're very proud to have the opportunity to highlight it. Now, with that, what's happening with phase two? So phase two was designed immediately after phase one design finished, which allowed us to get us out to bid and have our construction begin immediately after phase one was ramping down. So it's kind of seamless work. We have performed all of the in-water work in our in-water work window, and there was a fit in itself as part of phase two, and now phase two continues. I think Greg will give you some additional details on that.
Yeah, so like Maria said, there phase two actually had a couple components. Part of which is already completed was completion of the in-water work for the outfall. So that's all done. That is all complete. The rest will be done by the December of next year, and it includes some new style WAS thickening, the Centrisis THK system, adding digested sludge dewatering facilities. Adding some filtrate storage, and upgrading the city's open channel UV system to the, I believe it's the Trojan Signa system as well. So we hit the liquid, the secondary treatment system pretty hard. Now we're kind of hitting the solids and disinfection side on the phase two.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time with me today and talking a little bit more about this WWT project, the City of Pasco WWT Wastewater Treatment Plant Phase 1. It's just, it is an honor to speak with you guys about this because it was a very fantastic project. When we read this nomination form, I kind of knew it was a special one. So we really appreciate your time, and congratulations once again on the WWT Top Project.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
And for everyone who's watching, check out our video description below. We'll have a link to the article and some photos so you can actually see the project in action.